Hey, Fryer,
What's up?
how much does a polar bear weigh?
I don't know.
Enough to break the ice. And that one was brought to you by Marcouche Estovez, formerly of the
Oh,
Boxers Podcast. Thank you for
jeez.
that, my friend. And
Oh
welcome
my.
back to TLDR. I'm your friendly neighborhood backcracker, Dr. Joe. With me, as always, is my hunk in crime. And
You got
not
that right.
only are we the Woodward and Bernstein of the DSG, but we are strong-voiced, whole milk drinking champions of the DSG.
Speak for yourself. I have a very high pitched voice. I've known this for a long time. The way I found out was not my favorite story ever. But anyways, I am doing well. Thank you for asking, and thank you for getting the intro right today, not mixing up with the Pineapple Flux, that other show you do. But we got obviously some books to get to. Of course, we're doing what's new. That means we usually have something else planned for you guys in the course of the week. We very rarely are just going to do. We haven't done it yet. Just a what's new in comics, as much as that is the first thing we do after for pretty much every show. Although we do have catching up, and we are going to get to that. But first, I wanted to get your thoughts on that first episode of Moon Knight, Joe.
I wonder why they didn't give us the first 3 episodes like they have with many of the other shows they've done when they've dropped them, because I really wanted them. Not because I thought this episode was lacking anything, but with the way like the pacing of the story went and then the way it ended, I wanted that next episode like that. And I think, some people will sit here and tell you, "Oh, I like the weekly drops. It gives you something to look forward to." No. It's like going to Fenway Park. I grew up fucking in the bleachers, and then once you sit on the State Street Pavilion seats or on top of somewhere, you ain't never sitting in the fucking cheap seats again, right? Since I've had a taste of being able to binge watch shows, I don't want to go back to weekly viewing. Get that shit, get that corn out of my face. I want them all, and I want them right now. I mean, I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, it was outstanding, and I wouldn't mind if they gave it to us all right now. But I understand why they did it, because guess what? They don't need to, because this first episode was top notch. You don't need to go and roll out 3 or 2 to kind of give us the full picture or give us a chance to really get engrossed with it. We only need the one, which to me now I'm going to be curious going forward as we look, whether it's Marvel or Star Wars, as much as I wish I wasn't this way. Like I'm going to give those things a chance when they come out at first. I'm inclined to like those things. But when I see now going forward, if they roll out 2 episodes or 3 at a time, or if they ever go like all at once, now I'm going to have questions, because like, okay, if you didn't have to do it with Moon Knight, then what's the problem? I can't remember if they did it with Loki or not. I feel like they had a couple come out with Loki.
I can't remember.
Or with Hawkeye.
But
I feel like, I don't know about with Hawkeye. They might have only done the one with Hawkeye, but that was also another fun show too.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed Hawkeye. And so the thing with Moon Knight is that I am very unfamiliar with the character. Really, what you've discussed on the show, I've never really read much Moon Knight and only have really a cursory knowledge of the character. But I was very excited to watch the show, and I watched it with Megan, who, much to her chagrin, enjoyed it as well.
Yeah.
So that should tell you something, because I thought, what we got a lot of, it was a little confusing, especially if you don't know who the character is and you're not familiar with it. But knowing, again, just sort of the basis about the character, I thought Oscar Isaac fucking nailed it.
Yeah, he did.
And, I loved all the elements that we got. I loved how it came together. There's still a lot of questions that I know will get answered, so I'm looking forward to that. But I thought it was excellent.
The big thing for me coming into this with Moon Knight is you got to make sure you get the DID correct with this character. That is one of the biggest things that comes with him, and I felt they knocked it out of the park. Of course, I want to see a bunch of action scenes. Of course, we get one at the end of the episode. I want to see more of it because he's ruthless, and I need to see a little bit of that. But getting a taste of like that transition and what it's like for Stephen Grant and the changes that they made to that personality too, I also liked a lot. And I will talk about that more down the line. I know we'll be checking in with each other weekly on this, but at some point change my mind when that show's done. We're going to be doing a full length review, and I'll talk about some of the differences with the characters. But if you want to know other thoughts on Moon Knight that I've had in the past, I talked about Lemire's run with the character a little while back. I can't remember what episode we did it on, but it was like it was a 2014, 2015 run, something that end.
It's definitely on Hoople, I believe.
It was like 14 issues. Yeah, I think that's the one they're pushing most because he does not. That is such a trippy series. And I absolutely love this, especially like I think there were 3 arcs, and I want to say the first 2 were even more trippy than the final one. I can't remember. It's been a little while since I read them, but I really enjoyed that series. And there's been some other good stuff over the years too. You see some of that artwork when it's like Moon Knight and he has like a Wolverine claw and a Spider-Man, like Spider-Man's hand on his other arm, and then he's standing over Captain America's shield. That's where they really mess with his personality. He's really, really ruthless at that point in his career. So some awesome stuff there. And we will touch on McKay's Moon Knight a little bit today. But first, we got to get to catching up. For me, I guess I'll kick things off here. So I got Righteous Thirst of Vengeance, issue 6, Step by Bloody Step, issue 2, The Fourth Man, issues 2 and 3 from AWA. I fell behind on that one. Animal Castle, issue 4, which I've been talking about quite a bit. That is from Ablaze, which is a company we don't talk a whole hell of a lot about. It feels like they're fairly new. I don't know if they're as new as AWA or maybe even a little newer, but that is a book I'm 100% going to talk about on this show. I might actually be able to already, just based on what I saw in this last issue. I think they're doing like 3-issue arcs. Not entirely sure, but I will circle back on that at some point on the show. That is a guarantee. And then I also read Cities of Magic issue 1 from Scout. Solid first, I had my local comic shop over at Time Capsule in Seekonk. He recommended it to me, thought maybe something fun to take a look at. It was a solid first issue. We'll see after the second issue, not committing anything yet. The other book, of course, that I read is a book that you talked about. We had a little bit of overlap here, but Radiant Black issue 13, but we'll put that on pause and talk about that for a second.
Well, no, let's talk about that now, and then
Cool.
I'll get into my other books, and because there's one I want to end with because it sort of leads us into what's new.
Okay.
So yeah, Radiant Black 13. I mean, issue 12 wasn't my favorite of the series, but I thought this was great. I mean, this was a great Marshall issue. We got some great action. Everything about like this brought me back to the first arc of Radiant Black.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas the second arc was good, but it definitely got meta. It definitely got trippy. It definitely kind of, it went places, and it introduced a ton. So I very much enjoyed this issue because it sort of brought me back to what I fell in love with the book in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, this is the second issue. This is it's the first issue of year 2, so it's a big one. And honestly, Joe, like I have my big question coming out of this. Of course, we get the first look at that new villain, and I'm blanking on his name, the green dude. But he looks awesome. I love his look, and I think Daniel DiNiculo is going to do some stuff with that character as well coming up.
Awesome.
We'll also see him pop up in Radiant Red. But with Marshall, I can't. Well, actually, this thought kind of started first when I saw Ryan Parrott talking about Rogue Sun. Like, is Dylan gonna, maybe he'll stay a hero forever, maybe he'll not. Like, he said a comment that like kind of alluded to that. And then I'm watching, and as we're reading the end of this issue, it's like, I'm wondering if somebody else is going to become a villain in this world, and it feels like it could turn into that. Like, and this may have been this issue may have been the start of that, don't you think?
Yeah, I got that feeling too. Because they're definitely drifting apart from each other, and there's, I don't know. I feel like we could be getting a really good origin story here for a villain, and I kind of hope that's the direction that he takes. And then, would somehow be able to swing it back around, because in the first arc, my gut feeling is that it was going to be Marshall that was going to become the villain, right? Jealousy, like classic.
Yeah.
And then we get the old switcheroo, and now so there's a lot of great potential here. So this issue, like, not that I didn't enjoy the second arc, it was awesome, but this issue again just had that feeling of the first, those first 6. It was just like, why this series is so fucking kick-ass.
Yeah, and they changed it. Kyle kind of changed the focus too. This isn't just like a focus on one character the entire time. We're getting a little bit more bounce around, which is always good for any story, for any comic book story, that is. But yeah, with this too, it's like when we talk about having, we see that with origins all the time, where like, they were close friends and then something pushed them apart and then they became villains. And sometimes that can get played out. But in this case, if they were to do something to that end, it's like, okay, well, we've gone on a pretty windy ass path here where it didn't seem like that was going to necessarily be the case after a time. But now, some things change in Radiant Black 13, and this series right back on top. It's obviously they've been doing a lot for the Massiverse, but this last issue for the first title that started it all, big one for sure.
Yeah, that was huge. So We had Radiant Black 13. I also caught up on Step by Bloody Step #2. And then two big ones. Something is Killing the Children 21 returned last week. And
I've been waiting to hear about this. We haven't texted at all. I need to know.
I mean, again, this I very much House of Slaughter just wasn't my cup of tea.
Right.
The potential was there, but it just never. I still haven't finished it, but I couldn't wait to read this. And so, what I love here is that it sets up the next. So like the first, the first two arcs, first three arcs of Something is Killing the Children told a very distinct story, and that came to an end. And so now we see Erica. We get very little Erica in this issue. We're getting set up to the next town, the next victim, or victims, I should say, and the child that is sort of left in the wake after seeing all this chaos. And so it's classic Something is Killing the Children. Werther Dell'Edera's art again is tremendous.
Good.
And the main character, the child in this, is very reminiscent to that of Erica Slaughter, whereas the kid that the primary focus took, or at least in the first arc, is something was sort of the polar opposite. So very excited that this is back.
So looking back on it, you could have just not read House of Slaughter and been fine.
So far, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then so I would have saved that for last, but I wanted to talk about this book because it's going to lead us into what's new here. So I caught up on Shadow War Alpha #1. I remember you read that last week. You loved it.
Yeah, I don't think I was alone.
Right. So I had to read it because again, Robin, 13 or whatever issue, it said story continues next in Shadow War Alpha. And so I read it, absolutely loved it.
Okay.
I mean, this is continuing. Like it picks up.
I started to think you're not going to like it based on our conversations beforehand.
So it picks up right where Robin leaves off, which was a great story, and then it tells its own wonderful story, and then it says continued in Batman 122,
which is going to happen for a while.
Yep. So I started to read Batman 122. I was like, oh shit, I got to go back. And so that was the impetus to go, the reminder to go back and read Shadow War Alpha #1. And so I finished it. The story's great. Art isn't my favorite in Batman 122.
Yeah, which was very surprising for me. Are you ready to move into what's new now? Or
let's go right into it because this is what grinds my gears. It says this story will now be continued in
Deathstroke Inc.
Deathstroke Inc. #8. I haven't been reading Deathstroke Inc. #8. I don't want to read Deathstroke Inc. #8. It's not a book I'm reading. And now I've got to read a random issue of that book to get the continuation of this story. DC, you've always done your events so well. I know this isn't a big event. It's a mini event, but find a better way.
Oh, we're at odds on this one. I disagree.
Because I'm not going to I mean, I'll read it because we get it for free. But if I were buying these books, I wouldn't stop reading.
I have been interested in this since it first got announced because we're dealing with the League of Assassins. And then we have Deathstroke dealing with stuff too. And of course, Robin has been such a great title that you've spoken so highly of. And I'm not reading Batman. I'm only reading 1/3 of these titles. You're reading 2/3 of these titles. So I should be the one who's complaining, if anybody. But I like the premise of this. I think it's very interesting. And the big thing for me is Joshua Williamson writes both of these titles. To me, that's a very I think it's a really interesting concept. Oh, we have the one guy who's writing all of this is going to be taking over things, and now it's going to make this event seem a whole lot more fluid. So for me, it's like this is. I generally agree with you. Like, okay, we're going to have 3 events, and now it's going to get messy. But like Donny Cates is also doing the same thing with Hulk and Thor, only with 2 titles, so a little bit different. But to me, it's like this is the kind of thing.
Well, if this is the plan, then do what Marvel did with Devil's Reign. I can't believe I just told DC to do an event like Marvel, but like do it like that.
But it's the 3. It's you can't do. Well, look, you could absolutely go and you want to just shut it down and just have it be. So you're saying you wish they would stop Batman, stop Robin, and
they
stop
don't have to
Deathstroke
stop
Inc.
it. They don't have to stop
put it on pause. I mean, put it on pause, right? And then just do Shadow War and have it be like that.
Yeah,
Is that what you mean? Now you're picking
do that.
I think you're picking nits at this point. I disagree. A strong disagree on this one.
Like we have the benefit of you being able to get these copies, review
Yes.
copies for this, right? If I was shelling out money for this,
Mhm.
I wouldn't be buying the next day. I wouldn't be buying Deathstroke Inc. number 8. I'd be like, all right, story. That's all right. And I'll read Batman 123 and I'll read Robin 14 whenever it kicks off. Like, I don't know. It just annoyed the shit out of me.
I'll tell you what, though, the thing that did annoy me, I like how reporters are like normal. Like when I first saw him, it was in Deathstroke Inc., the start of that run, and then they kind of switched things over. And I don't know, I don't think they bounced back with him for the last issue, probably because he was working on this stuff. But I'll tell you what, man, I was disappointed with the art in this issue.
Yeah,
like
me too.
I can see, like I'm looking at, I didn't realize it was him at first, to be honest. Like I'm like, this seems familiar, but I don't know who this artist is. And then I scroll up and it's Howard Porter. It's like, wait a second. This guy was on Deathstroke Inc. I thought beforehand. And I liked what he did. And like there was a bit of zaniness to his art, so it kind of worked for what they were going with the title. But then I saw it here, and it's like, yeah, there's elements of the stuff there. Obviously, it's the same person drawing it, but it's like I just felt like it got like sloppy at times, which
it wasn't strong. It wasn't strong, and
that's not going to help.
There was panels. I thought the art was very up and down because I thought there were panels and there were sequences where the art stood out and was very strong. But like for the most part, there was like, I never want to be able to look at the art and go, huh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's not I don't want to knock anyone, but like like it was just like very sort of up and down because it wasn't consistent. The art wasn't consistent. Throughout the issue.
That's a problem. I always complain about that. If art is not consistent, he could have. I'm not saying I don't like his art anymore, but it's just like if that's if that's what it's going to be throughout all this stuff, then like I'm going to have an issue with it. Just the way it is. I think he's a good artist, but it happens sometimes. We save our being nice the entire time for our mainline issues for those that are new to the show. Which, by the way, if you are new to the show, make sure you go subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. We're on Amazon Music now, in addition to everywhere else. And make sure you tell a fellow nerd, comic book reader, whatever it is, about the show. Anyways, we also got from DC this week, Joe, Batman Killing Time issue 2, Earth Prime Batwoman issue 1, Flashpoint Batman Night of Vengeance issue 1, and another first issue we got, Batman Beyond Neo Year issue 1, which we both did take a look at. Of course, Batman Beyond, we're gonna want to give that a look. We've all, if you're like lived through the 90s, you saw or late aughts, or early aughts, I can't remember, but Batman Beyond, the show, we're always gonna have a soft spot in our heart for it. Of course, we see him pop up in Batman Beyond the White Knight. Awesome return to the character. Now we're seeing him get his shot at a main line again after popping up in Batman Urban Legends issue 7. What did you think?
Meh.
Yeah,
and that's disappointing because I mean,
all that build up for that.
All the build up for that. So I mean, I loved this cartoon as a kid, right? It was excuse me. And I love the character of Terry McGinnis. I love the character of Batman Beyond. I love the story where it's in the future and you've got the older Bruce Wayne as the mentor, and so there's so much potential for this character. And what we got in Sean Murphy's Batman Beyond the White Knight is we just got a very small taste, but we you get that feeling it's going to fit right in line with that world that he's created over at Black Label, and it's definitely going to be a more mature version of that character.
Yep.
Right. And part of the reason why I love the character is I love his suit. I love his look. And with this book, the couple issues I had was the story didn't really suck me in. And you want to talk about a nit to pick, right? I almost never, I don't think I've ever on this show in the year and a half longer than that we've been doing the show ever bitched about the lettering.
Nope. Never.
And so I found the lettering in this, when it came to the narration, very distracting. And that's only happened with me in like one other book. You know where else the lettering bothered me a little bit? I never mentioned on the show, but it was I think it was the Batman Who Laughs. Whenever he would talk, his lettering would be in italicized red.
I think you told me that.
And that was a little that was almost headache producing. Trying to read that, but like this, I don't know why it was definitely a nit to pick, but it kind of took me out of it, and I wasn't enamored with the story. It was just I don't know. I guess I mean, I wasn't expecting much for this book, but I was
Mm.
hoping to have my expectations exceeded, and it just didn't do it.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I think it was meh. I mean, we're getting we're getting his return in a bunch of ways. I thought the villain that they introduced like later on in the story has a cool look and has some semblance of potential. The fight sequences were really well done. I like the art in this, but yeah, from a story perspective, I'm just starting to wonder, Joe, like if Batman Beyond, like the way DC views the character, are we just not the target audience anymore? Like, is he in meaning, is it like for kids primarily? And don't get me wrong, I know comics, some people look at it as like it's mainly a kid outlet. That's not the case. And there are plenty of like comics that appeal to both adults and kids. But this one, I remember reading Batman Beyond before, and I think it was Jurgens who was primarily writing it then. And just felt like, yeah, this is primarily for younger kids, because it just didn't do it for me really in any capacity. It was like, this isn't bad, but it's just like, it's not really anything like that draws me in, and this kind of felt similar.
Well, I think like we were talking before we got going here is that the potential for the character is there. It just needs to either be put in the right writer's hands, or they have to, the writer who whichever writer is tackling the project, has to have the go ahead from DC to sort of take it down the avenue that they want to. Because you could
Mm,
very well be right. It could be DC saying, this is what we want for this character. Keep it within these confines and keep it very, appropriate for all ages. And
yeah,
that could be the directive, right? But could you imagine if Zdarsky or Lemire or Tynan or whomever like got their hands on this character, Sean
yeah,
Lewis? Imagine if Sean Lewis got their hands on this character,
yeah.
right? And
What
just
about
sort of
Tom
like,
Tom Taylor too?
right, Tom Taylor,
Yeah,
right?
they should give
Uh,
him everything over there.
right?
DC just become the Tom Taylor company.
Right?
Period.
Could you imagine? Right?
Mm,
Because the potential for this character is there. I mean, his look is fantastic. The idea that it's in the future, that it's not revolved around Bruce Wayne's Batman, but you can
mm.
still have him on as the mentor or whatever. I mean, it's there. It's there. The timing's got to be right. It's got to DC's got to say go with it, roll with
Yeah,
it, and you've
you
got
know,
to
it'd be
have the right writer.
if they did like just they just aged up Terry, like just turn like
Yeah.
like make him a lot older. And if you want to do that under Black Label, cool. I would think you're going to have an audience still. But I don't know the sales for Batman Beyond. But to me, I can't help but wonder like if you stop it so often, it's like, well, maybe you're just trying to appeal to the wrong audience with these stories.
Well, I don't think it's a
Because
coincidence either that we're getting
right.
two, and I think even maybe a third title here, right? So it seems like there's the bit of a push. DC did this, didn't succeed, but they tried to with Lobo, right?
Mm-hmm.
A little while ago,
Yep, crushing Lobo,
crushing
Superman versus
Lobo,
Lobo.
right? And they try, it just didn't,
Mm.
it didn't land. That's
That
partly
character has
because Superman and Lobo, like that issue comes out almost as infrequently as the last Ronin. Um, but like Crush Level had potential, it just stalled. Like it
Yeah, I
kind of
feel like
fell
you
flat.
cut down a couple issues on Crush Lobo, and it would have been a lot better. They just made it
Yeah.
too long. Yeah, I agree with you.
So
Speaking of Chip, though, of course, the end of Devil's Reign is this week. We got the 6th issue of that, which we, let's just, we'll talk about some other Marvel stuff in a second. But
yeah.
how did you feel about the event on the whole now that it's done?
I mean, it was everything that I expected it to be, everything I wanted it to be, and I am more excited than ever to pick up the pieces, going forward, right?
Mm,
With all the characters involved, and reading, getting back onto Daredevil, and then the other titles that will spin out of this as well. I mean, it was excellent, Nicholas. I mean, it
yeah.
was, like sometimes with these, like, because Zdarsky had been writing Daredevil for so long. I think it was 37, 38 issues before Devil's Reign started. So, you know, uh, there's a feeling of, okay, is he burnt out? Where's the story going to go? Will it live up to the high standards that he had set? And it exceeded. I mean,
Hmm.
and I'm not spoiling anything here. I just love how he sort of tied everything back to the beginning of Daredevil,
Yep.
right? It just, everything just sort of came full circle. It was such a fantastic story. I
Yeah.
cannot recommend it enough.
He pushes the character to the limits a lot, and
Yes.
and he also, of course, he said that this is going to be a primarily a Kingpin story, and that's absolutely the case. But obviously, a ton of Daredevil, ton of Elektra, and what's done with with Daredevil, especially, really had me asking a lot of questions in the course of the events of issue 6. But again, we can't spoil anything with that one because the embargo is not lifted. But now, well, with the way things are left in the aftermath, some of the major players in Devil's Reign are on a collision course with another character who we've seen kind of put in a new position on their own title. So I feel like we're going to have a lot going on there. I am very excited for the potential there. Like top-notch event, and I do agree with you. Like having an event with just that title and then having a bunch of other little things going on within it with other characters. I know Moon Knight kind of dipped its toes into it. We saw some X-Men stuff, but like you were fine, with X-Men, it was fine, fine not, reading that and some of these other things. I think the Thunderbolts one is a little beneficial to read that one.
Yes.
I think Woman Without Fear, aside from the snafu with Devil's Reign 5 and the Woman Without Fear issue 3, it was great. That was probably the my favorite like spinoff within the series. Of course, I love Elektra, so very excited for that character's future too. I just want my big thing is I need her the action figure. For those watching the stream, they can see. Oh no, they can't. My chair's in the way. You can see her a little bit over my my shoulder, but she looks awesome. I love the Daredevil Woman Without Fear look. So more of her seems like to come. But anyways, we also got X-Force Annual issue 1, Strange issue 2, Marauders issue 1, which I know a lot of X-Men people are going to be wanting to checking that stuff out. I know our guy Ferg over at Geeks Worldwide is reviewing that. We got Star Wars Bounty Hunters issue 22. Deadpool Bad Blood issue 1, which is drawn by Liefeld. I guess the plotting is done by him, but the script is not done by him. And I was like, oh, I want to give it a look. It's, the guy, one of the co-creators of Deadpool, and now he's drawing it again. But then I opened up the first page and I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. Like, I don't like his art style. So I don't know. I might try and power through it, but we'll see. Also read Spider-Punk issue 1. Wasn't really too high on it. I don't know if that was because the target audience wasn't for me, but like, I love this character's look. And of course, Anarchy and all that stuff to me is very interesting. I might give the second one issue a chance, but it's just like some of the stuff didn't necessarily, it just felt like, okay. Like, and the art was not for me either. So that's another problem. Like, it's not, if the art was kick ass, I might've been like, okay, second issue could win me over still. X-Men Red issue 1. We're focused on Araco now. So a lot of cool stuff going on there. And I'll tell you what, there's one X-Men character, because there are quite a few here. But there's one in particular who gets a little bit of a redesign by the end of the issue, and it's like, it's fucking sweet. Enough to just give the second issue a chance on its own. Black Widow issue 15, talked about that on the show, that series a while back. Quietly just continues to kick ass. And then Moon Knight issue 10, which was the other one I wanted to expand on a little bit. So I've said Jed McKay's Moon Knight has been like solid. I have not I think comicbook.com had it as the best comic of 2021. Total, no way. Absolutely not a chance in hell. It wasn't on, I know Joe's not reading it, but it wasn't on, you had plenty of other quality books on your radar that were also on mine. I had others too. And I love Moon Knight. But like this was not. Maybe for people who were new to the character, it seemed kind of cool. I thought the art has always been good, but the story's just always kind of been like, I just, just didn't, it was solid. Like, that's it. It just wasn't knocking my socks off. We get issue 10, best issue of the series by far. Exactly what I want from the character at the end of the story, where he just, in this one, the embargo has been lifted. It's just he turns back into this ruthless, vicious individual who's like, you fucking did something terrible to somebody I care about, and now you're fucked. And that's it. Like that, this guy, like, he's kind of like the Punisher in that sense. But there's obviously there's quite a bit of a difference with him. But he also tortures like individuals too, like villains or what have you. So he's taken a turn down a path that I am very much happy to walk alongside him with. So Moon Knight issue 10, best issue of the series by far. And that wraps things up for Marvel. We move over to Image. Of course, we got the Scorched, which continues to be freaking kick-ass by friend of the show, Sean Lewis. We have Radiant Red issue 2 by friend of the show, Cheris Chen. And then we have Little Monsters issue 2 by, not yet, friend of the show, Jeff Lemire.
Future friend of the show.
How was that?
It's fantastic. It's. I think part of the reason I love this book as well is Dustin Nguyen's art. The art
Mm,
in this is fantastic. It's a lot of black and white. It's mostly black and white with just splashes of red. It's a vampire story, so you can tell when it's obvious what the color red is represented when you see it. And I actually like this issue a bit more than the first issue. The first issue was definitely a little slower paced. You're getting introduced to a lot of different characters. This one, I think it was just it was a bit tighter,
mm.
which was great, and we get a little more of an origin story of one of the characters, and sort of the world they're living in, and it gets a little vicious. And this is it's just classic Lemire. There was a couple of panels in the beginning that was very reminiscent of Sweet Tooth, and in the origins of Gus, and in the cabin with his father as his father's dying, we get some elements of that in a flashback scene in this book. So I've been enjoying Little Monsters. I can't wait to see where this goes. And speaking of Lemire, they're ramping up.
Oh,
The Bone Orchid
the Mythos thing.
Mythos,
Yeah.
yeah, which I
Yes. Yeah.
believe kicks off in June. So I'm very much looking forward to that, and hopefully that's when we can
Yeah, maybe don't say anything more so you don't jinx anything again.
yeah.
Just
I
saying.
I'm just saying it's my wish, Nick. I can wish
Oh,
upon a star,
uh,
and we'll see if it comes true.
gotcha. Yeah. Oh, so you're trying to speak into an existence now.
That's
Got it.
right.
Okay. All right. To wrap things up, of course, we have Boom, Alice Ever After issue 1. AWA, very excited to get a look at the Joneses issue 1. Dynamite, West of Sundown issue 1. But that wraps things up for us this week on What's New. Finally kept it tight for once, Joe. Kind of
Well,
surprising.
that's because
Yeah,
between
but
Boom, AWA, Dynamite, and all the other ones, we had like a total of 4 books.
yes, this is true. So it helps. So thank you to them. Yeah, and Image had one of its smaller weeks, although 3
Yes,
hard hitting titles
yes.
for sure. But quite a week for us on that front. But anyways, we have something else planned for you guys this week. So make sure you keep your peepers popped. Again, if you haven't already subscribed to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, so it gets delivered right to your phone. Unless of course you want to watch the stream, which we're on YouTube, Doc's Twitch, and Twitter every week. Sometimes 12:30, sometimes 1:30, depends on if we have an extra thing planned for you. So follow us on Twitter as well so you get those updates at TLDR_pod. I think that's everything, Joe, that I had to get out of my system. Stay sexy.
You know it.